I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my useless to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. This isn't a selfish prayer. This prayer is a deal. God, you remove all this, the travesty of the consequences of running my life on self-will. You remove that, and I will be helpful. Then I will be helpful, and I'll be able to help the rest of your children in one way or the other.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you are all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Greetings, compadres. From Studio AA, deep in the heart of Texas, that was the voice of our friend, our frequent guest, Mr. Chris S., that you heard at the beginning of this episode. And you are going to be hearing so much more from Chris in just a moment. But first things first, this here episode is made possible by Anonymous, Audrey, Mary Lynn, Laura, and Tim. And so you're out there and you're a first-time listener and you're saying, what exactly did Anonymous, Audrey, Mary Lynn, Laura, and Tim do to deserve that mention on the beginning of this episode? Well, they visited our humble little website, www.soberspeak.com. They clicked on the little yellow donate tab and they made a contribution. So thank you so much, Anonymous, Audrey, Mary Lynn, Laura, and Tim. This here episode is coming right out to you'uns as always. We are going to let all the other folks listen in, but this one is especially coming out to you all. We here at Sober Speak are not here to get you all flustered. We don't want you feeling restless, irritable, and discontent. And I don't care if you're on the right or the left or you're in the middle or whatever you have going on. We don't care about any of that, right? We just want you to take a deep breath. Get out your favorite beverage, possibly some tea or, coffee or water or whatever. Or if, wine's not an issue for you, you can get out wine. I don't care. Because we don't have just alcoholics listening to this program. And I want you to think about your higher power, about mending relationships, and just chill out. We are here to get you back on the beam. Like I said, that was my friend, Mr. Chris S. at the beginning of this episode. He has been on several times. We've been kind of taking a slow walk through the steps. If you're interested in hearing more episodes from Chris, just go to our podcast and search up Chris S. If you don't know how to do that, write me an email and I'll let you know how. There's a couple. Well, let me just tell you right now. You can go on our website, go to the tab that says podcast, and then click on, then there's a little search bar and you hit Chris. Or if you have a podcast player, wherever you get your pods, I personally use something called Pocket Cast, and when you have Pocket Cast, you can subscribe to a particular podcast like Sober Speak, and then you can search on the episodes, and you can pull up Chris or whoever else you want to pull up. Casey, whoever you may be looking for, and you can see their episodes there and download them and listen to them. But nonetheless, this here is Mr. Chris S. today, and he is talking about steps 6 and 7 of Alcoholics Anonymous. Chris is from Blairstown, New Jersey, and has been sober since 1989. Chris discusses the root cause of awareness in the steps, a spiritual boot camp and what he means by that, the principle of willingness. He talks about, as you heard in the opening audio clip, what you hear about step 7 and the deal we make with AA, experiencing spirituality and what that means to him, and much, much more. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you our guest of the week, Mr. Chris S. And just so you know, we will not be having any listener feedback at the end of this episode. I'm just too busy. That's really what it comes down to. And but we'll pick it back up with those folks who wrote in and get them on next week, hopefully. Okay? God bless you all. Thanks for listening in. As I always say, I know you have so many things you could be doing with your time, and I appreciate you tuning in to my silly little podcast here. Enjoy, Chris. Okay, everybody. So we are back again with the one and only, the step connoisseur, the step master, Mr. Chris S. So, Mr. Chris S., even though I know this personally, will you please take time to go ahead, introduce yourself, give that sobriety date if you wish, which is very, very close to mine, and tell people where you live in this great world of ours, that Blairstown, New Jersey. But go ahead.
Absolutely. And hi, John. I just love being on this show. So my name is Chris. I'm an alcoholic. On or around December 28th, 1989, I had my final separation experience. It was something, and I'll tell you, it was so brutal. It pushed me into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. For years, I went to a meeting every day. So I live in New Jersey. I've lived all over the place. I've lived in North Carolina, Colorado, Connecticut, Florida. But I'm like a bad penny. I always seem to roll home. So I'm in New Jersey now, a little town called Blairstown up by the Delaware Water Gap. And I'm living a great life. This thing called recovery has just offered me a great life, John.
Yeah, it's our friend, I know you know him, Gary K. He always says this thing we have he always calls it this thing we have. He's talking about recovery and 12 steps in the community and all this stuff, and he's right about that. This thing we have is absolutely fantastic. By the way, I really like how you phrase that, your final separation experience and how brutal it was.
Oh, each of us have our own story to tell, with that. I was connected to mine, and it was about as gruesome as I ever want to experience. So listen, I'm grateful for that today. You would never have been able to convince me while it was happening. One day, Chris, you're going to be grateful that you're seeing demons run around the room. And I actually am today. It's something.
That gruesome final separation experience. I love that. Okay. So the last time, folks, we are gathered here today to experience or talk about, Chris is going to talk about the step in Alcoholics Anonymous known as step 6. Last time we got together, we've gone 1 through 5 thus far. Obviously, last time we got together, we talked about 5, and now it's time to move on to step 6. And I thought I would just start out from in the big book, reading this one quick chapter that it has regarding step 6, just to kind of tee it up for you. It's a good place, as you know, and everyone talks about this. Step 6 and 7, at least in the big book, are just a couple of short chapters. They explain it more in the 12 and 12. But here's what it says on page 76 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It says, and this is right at the top of the page, if we can answer to our satisfaction, and it's talking about have we not skimped on any stone. We didn't try to make mortar without sand, right? If we can answer to our satisfaction the previous steps, we then look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? Can he now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something, we will not let go. We ask God to help us be willing. So that's what the book says about step 6. I know you have thoughts about step 6. I'll let you take it from there, Chris.
Sure. So I want to back up just one paragraph to put something in context. When it says, if we can answer to our satisfaction, I want to explain what he means by that. And that's in the returning home section. So understand that we've done a 4th step. We've put together an inventory of resentments, an inventory of fear and anxiety, and a conduct inventory that emphasizes our intimate relationships. We put that together, and we've gone to someone and shared that. In today's day and age, it's almost always with a sponsor, but it doesn't have to be. It can be with a priest or somebody like that. But we've been as honest as we can be about the things that within us that we find objectionable. We certainly read what we wrote in the 4th step, but also there's a piece where these are the things I find objectionable about myself. These are the things that I've done to hurt people. These are my dirty little secrets, and we've dumped all of that out. It asks us at that point in time to return home. That you don't necessarily have to return home, but it's a contemplative 1 hour contemplative self-reflection exercise that they ask us to do. And I'll just read that. Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, carefully reviewing what we have done. What have we done? We've taken the first 5 steps. And it says, we thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know him better. Whenever it says we thank God, that's a prayer directive. We're supposed to say that or something very similar to that in this self-reflection. Taking this book down from our shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps. All right, that of course, we hear it read a million times. It's on page 59 and 60. We hear it read at meetings. Carefully reading from the first 5 proposals, we ask if we've omitted anything, for we're building an arch through which we shall walk a free man at last. So 1, Chris, did you admit that you were powerless over alcohol and that your life had become unmanageable? Yes, I fully admitted that I am susceptible to the obsession of the mind, which overrides every other thought and every other protective mechanism in my body, and alcohol goes back in my body. That I am subject to that because I've tried to quit 1,000 times. I am also fully aware that once I start drinking, it creates a craving within me. And I want the second drink more than I wanted the first. I want the 8th drink more than I wanted the 7th. And the more alcohol in my body, the more my body craves alcohol. I've also admitted that I have not been doing a great job managing my life. Sure, I've been able to hold a job, maybe, have a car, whatever. And sometimes you can think, well, I'm doing pretty good. I got a job and a car. But when you look at it, all the mistakes you've made, all the times you haven't shown up when you needed to, all the promises you broke, all the relationships that are in the toilet. You have to admit you have not been able to manage your life. Your life managed by you is unmanageable. All right. Two, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Yes, I believe that, and it says, if you now believe or are even willing to believe, we emphatically assure you you're on your way. So you don't have to have a full theological conception of God and the Trinity and all that. You need to believe that there's a power, a spiritual, emotional, some kind of power that works with all these other AAs. They're all sober. There's got to be something going on. I have to be able to tap into something to survive this, because on my own I'm not going to make it. So I'm good with that. Three, made a decision to turn my life and my will over to the care of God as I understand Him. So there's some information that makes this a little easier to understand. And I can boil it all down to this. I am going to make a decision to begin to live a spiritual life. I'm going to use a lot of the recommendations in this book, Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's going to be my relationship, and it's going to be something that I learned through experience. But I am going to start to I'm going to start to live a spiritual life, because that's the treatment for alcoholism, as well as a lot of other things that we aren't going to talk about here.
Yeah, and Chris, I want to let you know the last time we got together, and I've thought about it many times. You talked about step 5, and it's the promises of step 5 on page 75 in the big book. And one of the things that you brought up amongst many was, we may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. Mm-hmm. And, certain things just hit me at certain times, that's been in there forever. I'm sure I've read over it many times, but when you brought it up last time, it really rung true with me. And this is kind of what you're talking about, is now we're going out from having just these beliefs, and we're walking into an actual spiritual experience, which is kind of a weird thing to say, and to wrap your head around, but it really meant a lot to me.
As an alcoholic, I'm opinionated. I have these belief systems that don't allow any other new information. I have confirmation bias. I have prejudice. I've got all this stuff. So if you're going to tell me I'm going to need to live a spiritual life, you're going to have to show it to me. So we show it to you with experience, and all you need to do is follow these simple steps, and a change takes place. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. It depends on how hard we work for it. But what'll happen is your whole attitude and outlook on life is going to change. The way you react to the world is going to change. The thoughts that go through your head are going to become more comfortable and less confrontational, and you're just going to shift into a more spiritual way of life, which doesn't make any of us perfect, but it makes us able to survive alcoholism. You know what I mean? So the first thing we do is we have to look at the big problem. So if you're a business and the profits are down, the turnover is big, everything seems to be going wrong. What you do is you do a root cause analysis. You sit down and you really figure out what it is that's really causing the cause and condition of the failure of the business. So we do that with ourselves in our own lives. And Bill picks resentments. He picks fears, which I liken to anxiety, because that's how fear lands within me. I don't go all the time, but what I do is I avoid everything. You know what I mean? I don't want to bother because it's going to be uncomfortable. And that's anxiety. So that's ruining my life, my behavior, my conduct. I have conduct that's based on selfishness and self-centeredness, especially in intimate relationships. I pick somebody that's going to make me feel good, like I'm picking a drug or a car or something, right? I mean, I don't have a skill set to be looking for a soulmate. I have a skill set, looking for the next shiny thing that's going to last 5 minutes. And so I got to look at all this stuff and I got to dig deep into it. And that's what a 4-step is. And that shows me how life run on self-will is not successful. That's what this inventory shows me. My problems aren't coming at me, they're coming from me. And I discover these deep, deep truths about myself. And in step 5, I admit to God, to myself, and to another human being the exact nature of my wrongs. So that is the first week of spiritual boot camp. Let's say you want to become a soldier. You want to go fight over in Afghanistan or wherever. The first thing they're going to do, no matter which branch of military service you join, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to send you to boot camp. And what that is they march you until you can't march anymore. They make you crawl through mud. They make you stay awake. They teach you how to shoot guns. You got to jump over walls. All this stuff. And what it is it's disciplining you for the rigor that may be possible in front of you if you're a warrior. Now what the first 9 steps do is they're spiritual boot camp for us. They discipline us in a simple spiritual operational methodology. So if we apply this stuff in real time to our lives, we become disciplined at living a spiritual life. And I'll tell you what, I've never seen what I would call a real alcoholic, someone, end stage alcoholism, never seen one recover without a spiritual experience. Never have. And everybody has tried to figure out how to to help these people recover. The pharmaceutical industry, the psychiatric industry, there's myriad people trying to solve this problem. And I've never seen what I would consider a real alcoholic recover any other way. Maybe they can achieve tentative sobriety, but I'm talking about full recovery. I'm talking about super quality of life, really comfortable way of living, just gratitude coming out the ears. I've never seen it happen. You know what I mean? So let's figure that we've done these first 5 steps. You read a little bit about step 6. We can answer to our satisfaction that we've done a decent job with these first 5 steps. And then we look at step 6. Willingness has to be a part. John, willingness has to be a part of everything. We have to be willing to admit we're an alcoholic. We have to be willing to believe that there's a power greater than ourselves. We got to be willing to make a decision to head for that power. We got to be willing to do an inventory. We got to be willing to do a 5th step with somebody. So the willingness comes from this. I don't want to feel bad anymore. None of us do this out of a sense of virtue. You know what I mean? Like it's a Tony Robbins course or something. No, we're bulldozed into this by pain. And so am I willing to consider that this power that has so far kept me separated from alcohol, am I willing to ask that power to remove these difficulties in my life, the alcoholism that remains with me after the bottle? Am I willing to have God remove these things. And I'll tell you, if you've really done a good job with steps 1 through 5, the answer is always going to be yes, because you just got through inventorying the whole Megillah of the destructive characteristics of your life. You've just shared in a very humbling way, just how much of a scumbag you've been for decades. Are you willing? Are you willing to get better? Yes. And then it says, in step 7, it says, when we're ready, we say something like this: my creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my useless to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. So this isn't a selfish prayer. This is a deal. This prayer is a deal. God, you remove all this, the travesty of the consequences of running my life on self-will. You remove that, and I will be helpful. Then I will be helpful, and I'll be able to help the rest of your children in one way or the other. Some of the rest of your children. That's kind of the deal in step 7. Now, here's the thing, John. Why do we go to God with all this stuff? Haven't you tried to be better? Haven't you tried to stop lying? Haven't you tried to stop being selfish? Haven't you tried to stop, not being where you were supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing? Haven't you tried? I mean, forever I'd be like, oh, I know, I told you, that I wasn't going to do this anymore, but, I mean, haven't you tried? So why do we go to God? Because there's nothing else. That's why. There's nothing else. And yes, God, please remove this stuff. Please remove it. I'm tortured by this stuff. You remove this stuff, and I will live a life based on service, compassion, and charity. And that doesn't sound like it's going to be a lot of fun. Let me tell you what, John. It's a lot of fun. Now, the last thing I want to say about this, and then I want to talk to you. I think we have time. I want to talk to you about something that I experienced just recently. It has a lot to do with all of this. But it says here, grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. This is the last sentence. And it says, we have then completed step 7. Completed. We don't have to get character defects for dummies. We don't have to go to win friends and influence seminars. We don't have to work on our character defects. All right. Now, sometimes there's choices in front of us, and if we have the power to choose the right way, that's great. But sometimes we don't. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we know that we shouldn't be doing this, and we're doing it. This is God's job to remove these defects of character. We have then completed step 7, period, end of sentence. Where we're supposed to go now is we're supposed to put a list together for the people and the institutions that these character defects have harmed, because that's the next spiritual atmosphere we need to be in this 12-step journey of ours.
I like what you said there earlier about we go to God because it's like, kind of is almost like the last house on the block. And it reminds me of my prayer life in some respects. I know to do consistent prayer and keep up with it, but many times when I come up against a problem, challenge, whatever you want to call it in my life, and I've talked to all the people I can talk to. I've read all the books I know how to read. I've done all the research online that I know how to do, and I'm still confused about how to, quote, get over it, solve it, whatever the case may be. Well, that's when I go, hey, listen, I've done everything I can here. It's time for me to turn it over to you. And I wish it didn't take that pain every time in order for that to happen. It is not every time, but many times I do find myself, it's the last house on the block. And, you hear this all the time from people. They say, they'll go to something with their sponsor and they say, "Did you pray about it?" And you're like, "Oh, wow. I don't know why I should have done that, but I haven't done that yet." But anyway, it just reminded me of that as it's better to go to him quicker than later, because ultimately that's where I'm going to go anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to tell a story because, I think it has a lot to do with this 12-step process and what Bill was pointing us to in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, especially, but also in his later writings. So I would describe what Bill Wilson is laying out for us as this: experiential spirituality. Now, in the beginning in Alcoholics Anonymous, these exercises were Oxford group exercises, and they were fundamentally, developed from first century Christianity, and they were put into a completely religious conceptualization. When you went through the steps in the first 3 years of AA, like 1935 to like 1939 or so, you were doing it in a very, very Christian, very religious type of experience. However, I believe Bill was very far-seeing. He understood that he would be closing a couple of the barn doors if this was going to stay fundamentally Christian. A couple of things with the Oxford group: the Catholics weren't allowed to participate in Oxford groups. So the Catholics couldn't go to early AA, right? And you think about, we have Jewish people, and there's a myriad of religious expression out there in the world today. So what Bill and especially Hank Parkhurst did is there was a de-religionizing of the Oxford group process.
And I just want to make sure I heard that term that you said on the beginning: experiential spirituality. Is that what you said?
Yes, that's how I would describe what Bill is trying to teach us here. We get so much criticism. AA is religious, and that hurts our ability to go into prisons and things like that, right? Because it's misunderstood. No, we what we really are is we're experiential spirituality. You can layer any religion you want on top of it and put a cherry on it if you want. But what Bill is pushing through to us in this book, in the language that he thought best to use in 1939, is experiential spirituality. Now, I want to tell you a quick story. I read this book recently, and it blew my mind. The book's title is called God the Bestseller, and it's written by this guy Stephen Prothero. And here's I'll quickly tell the story. Take me about 5 minutes. So this guy's a book dealer, and he makes his money by buying estate sale books, real high end books. And then he auctions them or sells them. That's how he makes his money. And there's a family on Cape Cod who's been bugging him, please come. We've got a lot of great books. It was kind of a haul for him. Finally, he went out there and took a look. And when he walked in, he was like, "Oh my God." It was the largest selection of spiritual and comparative religion books he's ever seen in his life. Hardcover, first edition, signed by the author, right? He's like, who lived here? Whose books were these? And he slowly starts to find out. He spends a lot of time there. He gets access to the guy's personal, papers and letters and all this stuff. And he becomes fascinated, and he just digs into this guy for a long period of time. Now what his name was Axman. And what he did was, from 1925 to 1965, he was the senior religion editor at Harper's Publishing. That's the guy who owned this house, and it was all his books, right? A lot of them he published and edited. Now the amazing thing about this guy is, as he's going through all these books and letters, he's realizing this is the person who shaped 20th century religious thought. This is the guy. And he did it by picking the authors, and he did it by having his editors edit their work. And he did it by picking the bestsellers and promoting these books, and selling millions and millions and millions of these religious books all over the world. So that's who this guy Axman was. And the interesting thing that brings us back to AA is he starts finding all this Bill Wilson stuff in this guy's house. Come to find out, this guy Axman is the person who did the final editing on the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions and AA Comes of Age, and published it. Now, he had become really, really good friends with Bill Wilson. More on that in a minute. But he made a deal with Bill because Works Publishing was, an Alcoholics Anonymous thing. So yeah, I'll put all this, I'll package this up. I'll get it. I'll do the final editing. I'll make it into a beautiful, piece of work. And Bill, I'm not going to hold on to the copyright. Works can have the copyright for it, right? So he starts going through all these letters, and he starts to find out that, first of all, Axman published amazing people. But the people he got personally close to were the people that not only were writing incredible spiritual work, but were doing incredibly spiritual things. So some of the people Axman edited was Martin Luther King Jr., Albert Schweitzer, Dorothy Day, Hurd, Huxley. I could go on and on and on. All the people, all the books that were the bestsellers in the last 130 years, this guy had something to do with. And he became personal friends with Bill, and they became spiritual hombres together. There was a small group of people, and what they would do is they would meet constantly, and they'd be told, what kind of meditation are you doing? What's the new book you're reading? Hey, let's start a spiritual retreat center in California. Hey, let's go down to Africa and see Albert Schweitzer. And they got involved in all this kind of stuff. And Bill Wilson was in this guy's pocket. They were buddies. Now, what Axman did was, he published religious books, but comparative. I mean, he brought, he published Yogananda. I mean, he brought a lot of Eastern, writers and traditions into America and made them popular. So he was not a one size fits all guy. He wanted to hear everything, like Bill. Bill wanted to hear everything, and they became really, really tight. And that's one of the reasons why I say what Bill Wilson is offering us here is experiential spirituality, because that's kind of what Axman was into. He was publishing religious books, but when you look at what he was doing, he wanted a deep experience. He wanted a deep connection with the divine. And that's what Bill wanted. He wanted actual experience with God. He didn't just want to read about it. He wanted to experience it. And these guys got about that business. And you know what's the cool thing? I truly believe in my heart today that's that search. It's that desire for connection and unity with the divine that is our salvation as alcoholics.
Seek
And
and ye shall find.
and it's a wide palette. There's a million different directions you can go up the mountain. You know what I mean? So I hope you found that interesting and not too far into left field.
Oh yeah, no, that is really cool. I love that. And is Bill the rare book dealer that I know? Is he the same guy in AA?
No, this was Prothero, I believe, the guy who wrote the book. He wrote the book on his experience,
Okay, gotcha.
learning about this guy Axman.
The only reason I ask is because I have some interviews coming up with a guy who wrote, the guy who wrote the writing of the big book.
Yeah, yeah.
He's a rare book dealer as well, Bill S. And
Yes, he's a cool guy.
yeah,
He lives not far from me up in Connecticut.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly what he said.
That was a wonderful book, by the way. Extremely extraordinarily disciplined historical work he used on that book. You know,
Yeah,
he's no joke.
he's made me think about several of the, all the stories that you hear. And some of them are true, some of them aren't, some of them are kind of folklore, and it's interesting to hear his point of view on it. I absolutely love it. I know he's real good friends with Bill C as well.
Yeah, yeah,
They hang
he's
out
a cool
quite a
guy.
bit. Okay, so in terms, I know I really like that story. I like hearing all those little tidbits of history and where this stuff came from, and that was absolutely fantastic. Okay, so steps 6 and 7
Hmm.
to kind of you know put your final thoughts, as Jerry Springer would say, I guess, final thoughts around step 6 and 7, what they mean to you, experience, strength, and hope in that arena. What are your thoughts there?
Step 6 and 7, buddy, I am all the way in on this. I'm not looking forward to steps 8 and 9, making direct amends, but I've made a decision. I'm all in. And God, please remove from me the things that are blocking me off from taking the next steps. That I think is a good way to look at steps 6 and 7. Always be willing to ask God, to ask God. Listen, if your motives are good, if what you're asking God to do for you is going to be beneficial to others, if it's going to help you be more useful to others, get about it, because those are the type of prayers that get answered.
And sometimes, Chris, it talks about this, I think, in the 12 and 12, in terms of, I can't remember exactly how they say it, but sometimes when it comes to character building and not character building gets lost in the dust. In other words, it can be kind of hard. It sounds good. Yeah, I want to be of more usefulness to other people. But sometimes when it comes down to that fork in the road and you see it, and it's a tough decision. I mean, obviously, there's real, don't steal, don't murder, don't do this or that. But it comes down to a lot of gray areas sometimes when it comes to those character defects. And I think at least I have struggled with that my entire life. I know Bill Wilson did. There's been a lot of writings about it. And I would imagine most people do.
Why I know this works is the character defects that were removed first were the ones that were blocking me off from being helpful to other people. you know, like my screaming and hollering, and my violence, and the things that were blocking me off from being helpful. There's some stuff that still hangs on. I'm praying every day for 35 years for some of these things, but God has not seen fit yet to remove them, or I have not shown significant willingness to be in the atmosphere for their removal.
No, I get it. And that's why we keep talking about it. That's why we keep doing these podcasts, why we keep talking about it in meetings. And it's an ongoing process. And I really appreciate you coming on here today to give me your experience, strength, and hope with step 6 and 7. And I know the listeners are going to enjoy it.
I can't tell you how grateful I am that I met you and that we're doing this. Nobody's enjoying it more than me.
And I know the listeners do as well. All right, let me read from page 164 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us, like me and Chris S., as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Once again, Mr. Chris, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.